One thing that's pretty interesting to note is how much history hasn't really been explained. There are a lot of details of lore not explained, mostly surrounding Skull Knight and the God Hand. What's interesting is the familiarity between Skull Knight and Void. The two look at each other as if they know each other. Even more interesting than that, Femto looks like a recreation of Griffith's torture outfit when he was ravaged. Upon studying Void, it looks as if he had been skinned alive, as if he too had been tortured before sacrificing hundreds to God Hand. It's likely that Void and Skull Knight have gone through a similar situation as Griffith, which is also likely why Skull Knight showed up to save Guts anyway. Not a lot is known about Skull Knight aside from the fact that he's worn the Berserk armor and is the great king of Geyserik, so a lot of what I'm talking about here is left up entirely to speculation, but it's interesting to take note of regardless. It's easy to assume that maybe Skull Knight wasn't wearing skull armor, but rather the Berserker armor. This would explain why he has the ability to conquer so many kingdoms with such force quite well. So my general assumption is that he would need to fight his own Beast of Darkness, which again implies that he would need a mage like Shierke. Let's assume that one of these mages he'd need was none other than Void himself, because, before his torture. Well, we see a bunch of bodies under the kingdom at the end of the Golden Age, but they're not eaten, and they look like they were crushed. Plus, these brands haven't attracted any creatures, so my assumption there is that this was a fake cult that carved the brands themselves. I think Geyserik wanted to become like Griffith, a god of the astral realm, with absolutely insane levels of ability. So the assumption would be that Void researched what it is he wanted to become and discovered something awful. So Geyserik sends him to go be tortured or whatever, and then Void becomes that sage Mazgus talked about in the next arc. A lot of people talk about Geyserik being sacrificed 1,000 years ago in the Imperial capital, but given Flora and also the fact that the festival happens every 210 years, mathematically this does not add up whatsoever, especially since they talked about 5 Dark Angels. So my guess is that these angels were God Hand, and it resets every 1,000 years by having 6 festivals, or 5 or so, I don't know. I'm not the first person to come to this conclusion. There actually is a link in the description for someone else who came to the same conclusion. Of course, this is just speculation and theory. Some would argue the Beast of Darkness was not created from the armor, but it's interesting to consider the lore regardless by studying the details sprinkled throughout the manga. It's honestly fitting that they recover back to health in a cave rather than in Gato's house. Caves represent security and the symbolic heart, however it's also fitting because this is not the first time the two had recovered in a cave. The art to this entire segment is handled flawlessly with little in the way of being perfect. Every bit of it is heart-wrenching and done to a T. You got these images of the gorgeous open fields as Guts looks on, hurt from all the awful things he's witnessed. We also discover that the morbid creatures that haunt Guts' nightmares is none other than his own child. From this point forward, Guts is forced to move on and keep going, and as such, sets out in pursuit of the apostles that caused this. In this, it completely illustrates Guts and his hatred for the apostles, as well as his hatred for Griffith. You can see and feel every ounce of rage in the images of him during battle. It's driven with pure, raw emotion. In any case, after the eclipse, the Vatican run into it and stare in awe at what used to be the characters we knew and love. Now, just one night in his travels with Puck, Guts encounters a group of bandits in a forest holding a girl named Jill captive. The hostile animation of a tree infused with evil spirits causes the captors to flee, leaving Guts to battle the entity until sunrise. We're told of this horrifying method of torture in which victims are forced to wrap their own intestinal insides around a tree. It's quite morbid and sort of set up as a morbid foreshadow, indicating that the tree itself is tainted with evil. It's also likely the fact that Guts' name is Guts and the subject matter is intestines might be intentional, which is amusing in its own very gross way. We see an image of Guts wearing the black cloak over his face, resembling the likes of a Grim Reaper, again playing into the Bringer of Death theme presented by the tree monsters birthed from the morbid torture. This, of course, is not the first time Rosine has appeared in the Berserk franchise. The first time would actually go to the Golden Age arc. It's quite subtle and easy to pick up upon reread, but you'll come to notice that each apostle has their own respective story. This means the people we watched murder our beloved Band of the Hawk each have their own reason for being what they are, their own reason for becoming a monster in this way. Every one of them suffered in some way, and because of that gave up every scrap of their humanity to become a monster higher than that of humanity. Berserk is yet again using its theme of asking if the people we trust are really all that good, or the people we hate are necessarily all that bad. Whereas the king started off lovable and turned out to be a disgusting rapist piece of shit, Rosine started off unlikable and ends up becoming a character you understand and likely sympathize with as well. One point of concern is the moment in which Jill is just minding her own business in her room and her father's friend comes over and attempts to open her door. It's never really explained what it is he was planning to do, but given the fact that this is fucking Berserk, I think it's pretty clear what his intent was upon trying to open her door. Luckily, he can't get in and just gives up for the night and leaves. I suppose if he was sober, he would have done more than just try to open the door, but this is sort of a peek we get into the horror of their lives. We learn that the adults around this place are quite frankly not good people. They're all horrified, but their horror has led to them only thinking of themselves in all these constant raids that they've been subject to. The adults in this arc are mostly just inconsiderate of their children, which is why Rosine started this entire monstrous tirade to begin with. Zepek is Jill's father, and not a lot of information is given about him aside from the fact that he's abusive. However, the reason he's become such an asshole is because he's picked up a pretty bad alcohol problem to drown his sorrows due to his former glory of being in the military. He can never recapture the days he had in his younger years and is stuck with a wife and a child who he feels doesn't respect him. This gets so out of control that he doesn't even care if his friends want to fuck Jill. He just lets them do whatever they want, pretty similar to Gambino's way of treating Guts. In a similar situation, Rosine's parents spent a lot of time fighting, likely over her father's question of whether or not she's truly his daughter, or was the result of a pregnancy from rape. However, she dreamed that she was an elf, from this obsession she grew with the story she read. She would spend all her time collecting bugs as a child, and one day she went really far into the woods that her parents became worried. The direction of their perspectives is quite well done. We see images of Jill after saving herself from her father's intoxicated friend, as darkness surrounds her and the light shines on her, symbolizing her loneliness and isolation since her friend left her behind. In any case, we're treated to one of my favorite points in the arc where Jill goes outside after Guts is booted from the town for having an elf with him, and we see he went to a nearby windmill. The windmill, in my opinion, standing as a symbol of peace and stability, spinning in a peaceful and slow manner. Inside, Guts is doing something we were convinced he'd never get a chance to do after the eclipse. We get to see Guts finally take a proper nap. In this lone image, Guts isn't having a nightmare. He isn't haunted by the horrifying images of his past. For once, Guts is resting peacefully. In this lone image, you can see his struggles, but at the same time you begin to sympathize with him. Jill then decides to rest on his lap, and it's just so peaceful and sweet and fucking cute, and this is the same manga where a woman gets nearly raped by a horse. Moments like this are why I live for Berserk. It's why I think it's such an amazing manga, because despite all the horrifying violence, Berserk still has genuine moments of peace and love. However, the moment is sweet but shortly lived as a swarm of monstrous elves have started making their way to the town. The transition is handled slickly with this technique that will be used again later in the arc. It shows an image of the landscape, then it shows an image of Guts' brand, then the landscape, and then Guts' brand a second time. We see people hiding in their houses, but Guts bravely faces the swarm of little bug-like creatures. Despite the fear of everyone else, Guts is familiar with this, and knows what he's going up against. This is a very admirable part of the arc, because Guts fights the monsters as if they're nothing, and even uses a kid to bait the elves before lighting them on fire. We also learn that the elves are none other than the captured children of the village who have been going missing. This says several things at once. 1. Guts saved the kid's life before using him as bait for the elves, and the adults all tell him that he should feel ashamed of himself for endangering a child, but he points out that he was the only one who lifted a finger to help the kid. The adults just hid in their houses like a bunch of worthless fucking cowards, telling the viewer, yet again, that the adults in this town are not good people, and that they're the very reason these monsters are attacking the town to begin with. 2. That Guts is very difficult to argue with. 3. That plenty of times in the past, Guts has always been good at justifying the things he's done, whether it be when the mayor of the Count's town told him he was evil, or when Corcus tried to criticize him for not wanting to be a member of the Band of the Hawk anymore. Guts is very hard to argue with because most people who do try to argue with him usually aren't very hot shit themselves. 4. That Guts is willing to use whatever materials he feels he needs to when fighting in order to win. This was obvious from the very get-go when he fought Pazuzu that he always plays his battle on a successful gamble and he always wins in the process. But this is also pretty similar to what Griffith does most of the time as well. using the lives of others to get one step closer to his goal. And 5, well, it tells us that it's going to be a really, really fucked up arc. And I say this because we learn that technically Guts is murdering the children of the town in cold blood, which, if you really think about it, is really fucked up. I hate kids, luckily, so I'm glad I get to see this bad boy murder some fucking children. Hell yeah, dude. Guts tells Jill bluntly that he's planning to murder her best friend, and that it's for the best she doesn't go with him. The way he says it is very harsh and cold, but if you really analyze his intentions for saying this, it's pretty clear he doesn't want her to come because he doesn't want to hurt her. This is because the last time he murdered an apostle in cold blood, the apostle's beloved daughter ended up emotionally scarred and almost died. Guts, in this case, is telling Jill to stay away because he doesn't want another repeat of what happened last time. Of course, Puck breaks the fourth wall and tells Guts that without him, this story would be too grim. And he's right. I just kind of loved that part. I really didn't think a series like this would break the fourth wall, but it did. In any case, the page is once again laid out similar to how it was when the elves showed up. He shows an image of a campfire, Guts set up, his brand, and then Guts, and repeats in that order. This is kind of the manga's way of telling you that the kids are going to be back. This is then followed up by the fetus creature appearing in the fire, continuing to invade Guts' nightmares. It's interesting it appears in a fire of all things. Fire represents passion, compulsion, and motivation, which is why Guts and Casca talked about the bonfire of dreams. That moment that they cherished is clouded by the future together that they likely can never have. The fetus is a reminder of Griffith, and now that is his motivation, but it's also a symbol of how the moment that Casca and Guts cherished is now clouded by their demon child, which represents the horrors that Griffith has caused both of them. This is probably the most genius part of the arc, but it gets even better from here. We see a gorgeous night sky as Jill runs through the field with Puck on her head, as if to step back for a moment and process what we've been given. Guts raises his sword to battle with a bunch of children who are literally lit on fire. He stands alone, surrounded by the children he murdered in pursuit of his revenge. They're all brought to him by his child's ghost to remind him of the horrible things that he's done. Whether or not it really is horrible is up to speculation and morals. He did save the townspeople from murderous monsters, but it was because of his own personal motives. He didn't do it for the townspeople, and as far as he's concerned, they can die. I feel this makes a clear indication of Guts' personality. He only chases revenge to the bastards that took away everything he loved. Everyone in this arc is selfish, except perhaps Puck, who seems to be the only character not following his own goal. We're given an image of a wolf in the night sky, which symbolizes guardianship, and the moon represents time as it embodies the cycle. The wolf is a watchful protector, or in essence Guts, and the moon is the same moon that Guts has looked up at various times when bonding with the very object that saved his own life countless times. I only assume the wolf represents Guts because of the fact that Guts is represented by a dog later on. In any case, Guts viciously gets lost in a trance and kills the ghost children, likely in a rage at his reality. One of them cries, but he sees through the emotional manipulation and continues to murder them all in cold blood. One would read this part and think Guts is likely an awful person for murdering kids and then re-murdering those kids and enjoying it, but when Jill comes into the picture, he begins to swing at her, but realizes that she's not one of them, and protects her from the clutches of the ghost children. Again, reiterating the fact that he cares for Jill's safety. My assumption being that a lot like Corcus and the young daughter of the Count, he sees himself in Jill, and sees the same vulnerability in her that he went through as a child. One thing I noticed was this image of Rosine carrying a snake in her hands, and this stood out to me because snakes are pretty symbolic. Snakes shed their skin and achieve new forms, which is kind of similar to what Rosine did by ascending and becoming an apostle. I only say this because Guts is seen earlier killing and drinking from a snake to heal himself, which I think is pretty self-explanatory foreshadowing of what's to come. Snakes are depicted as devious influencers, and Rosine being attracted to them kind of shows her true intentions. Guts killing one of them is mostly proof of his opinion on them as animals, especially since he murdered an apostle snake earlier in the series. In any case, Jill tells Guts about Rosine, and Guts comes to the conclusion that Rosine used a Bailet to sacrifice her parents. He then cuts her deeply with his words and tells her to go away, and even states that next time he won't stop his sword when swinging at her. This is funny because we both know that he's not going to fucking kill her. It's just empty threats to make her again go away and not get involved with what he's about to do. But it works. She nearly slaps him. However, he grabs her arm, and in that moment she feels like there's nothing that she can fucking do about this. I want to take note of the sort of sexual way that Rosine wraps her arms around Jill. It kind of comes off as if her relationship with Jill, or at least the way she views her, is a lot more than just friendly, or even sisterly for that matter. It can be kind of questioned that likely she may actually have a crush on Jill, but that's not confirmed in the series. She wants to spend the rest of her life with her in a elf paradise. I love how, again, the use of color is meant to be ironic. One thing that everyone notices is that during the Golden Age arc, Guts and Griffith look pretty plain, but after the eclipse, Guts is represented by the color black, and Griffith is represented by the color white. Guts kind of looks like the bad guy, and Griffith, to an extent anyway, looks like the good guy. This is meant to sort of tell the viewer that there is really no good or evil in Berserk, because as I've stated in Part 5, Griffith saved a nation, but raped a girl and made her mentally for the rest of her life, and Guts saved towns from the horrors of monsters, but told a young girl to kill herself. This is important, however, because Guts turns around, sees that Rosine is right there, and swings at her, and in this image she's holding Jill in her arms, and Guts looks monstrous. Guts is dark, Rosine is light. And out of context, this looks like, yet again, the brave, heroic young girl saving her friend from a dark monster. But since we've been following the story thus far, we just know it's a monster with emotions clashing against another monster with emotions. Afterwards, we see a huge pile of bodies showing the casualties of selfishness, and the Guardians come out. The Guardians are disfigured bug-like monsters that look sort of like sexual deviants. Why are their cocks out? The bug-like disfigurement is just really fucking chilling and horrifying, and it really just... Jesus Christ, this is the worst arc. They look so fucking unnatural but solid at the same time, and it's just so fucking unsettling. Still, Guts swings with forceful rage, again channeling his hatred for Griffith through each swing. I want to note that one thing I always kinda wondered was why Rosine has to become a bug specifically, and honestly now that I think about it, she felt small and weak as a child, and that's exactly what bugs are. Small, weak little creatures that can be crushed mindlessly by anyone not paying attention. It's likely that's why Rosine became a bug. It makes a lot of sense, honestly, because it shows how small and weak she felt before. Another thing I didn't mention was the fact that this cross-bird symbol that Farnese prays to is kind of similar, at least in look, to the brand on Guts' back, and much like what I was referring to with the snakes, it looks like two snakes wrapping around a bird. This becomes pretty interesting given how much religious symbolism is thrown at Berserk, what with Griffith represented as a bird, and many people, including the Pope, praising Griffith as if he were some kind of messiah. But we know for a fact that Griffith is not a good person. I think this is interesting given the Bible is told from God's perspective, but it never explicitly states how Satan felt about any of the events that transpired, meaning that maybe there's a story here that we haven't heard. Griffith, much like Jesus, is tortured but rises again, and also there's this imagery later on that shows a bird being crucified, with the Balet under it. The manga pushes Griffith as a symbol of Jesus very, very far, to the point it's pretty clear that he's a Jesus figure. I think Berserk is very critical on religion in general, given God caused an apocalypse simply because people wouldn't obey him. In the way society views Guts, he's the devil. He's an evil mercenary killing anyone who gets in his way. In any case, the beetle creatures are followed up with a cute image of Puck riding a beetle as if he's fighting in war. It resembles the beetle that Guts just murdered, which is pretty cool given most things. Nothing to write at home about, though. We're given breathtaking images of Misty Valley with this innocent atmosphere and the cute images of the elves playing. That is, until Puck discovers that they're playing with human body parts, like an eyeball, which makes the innocence ironic. Despite that, however, the imagery of the settings is absolutely gorgeous and handled with the utmost care. Flowers kind of stand as a symbol of Jill's innocence. However, she looks into a lake and sees a reflection, which is kind of symbolic of her seeing the truth. This gets followed up by the light innocence quickly turning into a darkened nightmare when the elves play human. A lot of people say that this scene is kind of gratuitous and edgy and adds virtually nothing to the arc whatsoever, and while I can see how this might be true to some, I don't necessarily think that it's edgy or that it was added for no reason. It's a very dark and screwed up part of the arc that a lot of people clearly take issue with, at least from a moral standpoint. I mean, you've got children murdering each other violently, and then one of them even rapes the other with a stinger. As unlikely as that is, this is their way of emulating what humans have been doing in warfare for years. I think the stinger part was only necessary because when these kids become elves, they don't necessarily have genitalia, and they're kind of sexless. Of course, Puck is still referred to as male, which is why I refer to him as male, but in all honesty, the elves are sexless. In any case, as screwed up as this part of the arc is, I feel the purpose that it serves is kind of a wake-up call that escaping from reality is impossible. Jill almost agreed to join these elves in their world because she wanted to get away from real life and continue to live in this fantasy. But these horrible atrocities that these children are doing is kind of like life coming back and slapping her in the face. It's basically telling her that this is all just a lie, and that she can't escape reality, because reality will always come back and remind you that the world is filled with horrible things. I agree it probably could have been utilized a little bit better, and I'm sure he certainly could have toned down on all of the fucked up brutality, or at the very least he could have removed the stinger part because that was kind of unnecessary, but I do feel that this is symbolic of Jill's fantasy crushing before her very eyes, because it's impossible to live in your own personal bubble without the horrors of the real world at some point coming in. As she runs, the monsters follow after her, and it kind of resembles the eclipse, and she continues to run in fear away from the darkness. Later, we're also given this image of a cocoon containing a child being transformed into an elf. He's in a fetal position, a lot like Griffith was during his rebirth as a God Hand member. However, when he falls out of the cocoon, he's nothing more than a horrifying, disfigured bug corpse that is creepily reminiscent of Guts' child. Guts shows up resembling the likes of a monster yet again, covered in the corpses of children. I love how Rosine's monster form looks. It's like she's literally consuming herself before your very eyes. We see her spread her wings out in front of the moon, which represents immortality, telling us that she feels she's immortal in this new form. Her wings stand as a symbol of freedom. Finally, she's been given the chance to escape from the hell she once endured. A lot similar to Griffith's hawk-like presence, the wings stand as a symbol of freedom, being able to spread your wings and do whatever you want without shackles holding you back. Guts has one of my favorite fights with her in the manga. Each page looks more intense, as if this is what the arc has been leading up to. Rosine falls to the ground after Guts shoots her with his cannon, and it resembles the Greek tale of Icarus, in which a boy who was warned not to fly too high with his wings gets his wings burned up because he didn't listen to what he was told and was too stubborn. Rosine's journey resembles this, given Jill tries to rationalize and reason with her, but she doesn't listen. The most exciting moment is towards the end of the battle, where Guts raises his sword with all his might, and in this very image he looks like a monster, whereas the monster looks like a poor victim. As the reader, we know Rosine is the monster, but in this very image, Guts looks even more evil than Rosine. He's been channeling every single inch of his hatred and rage into his blade, and because of this, it's like he's a monster rather than the former. I mean, for fuck's sake, Rosine stabs him in the cheek with her stinger, and the dude fucking bites it with a vicious stare. This is seriously one of the most brutal arcs in the series, and I fucking love it so goddamn much. After the battle, Rosine flies off wounded, and we get to see an image of her childhood, when she endured hell. She sits alone in the dark, a lot like Jill earlier on, with a window shining light on her. And this is yet another stroke of genius, given what it conveys. The darkness surrounding her represents her loneliness. Even though she has Jill, she feels very alone when Jill is not around. Windows are designed not only to be see-through, but to let light in. To see light streaming in through a window can be a symbol of connection with a more spiritual aspect of life, of letting light into our souls. The light is her hope for the future, her wish to go out and do whatever she wishes and pursue her dreams. Then she falls, as her final thoughts show her concern less about the fact that she's dying, but what her next meal will be. I think in a sense this is her homesickness. She wants to go back home because, granted, she is a child. It's a very sad way to end her character arc because she died flying freely, just like she always wanted. We're also given an image of her looking up at the sky of whiteness with a glimmer of hope in her eyes, juxtaposed to her inevitable end. Jill follows after Guts and begs him to take her with him so that she can escape this horrible life. However, soon after he wraps his cloak around her like a cloud of darkness and fights off monsters that surround them, giving Jill a glimpse of the awful life he's been forced to experience. His monstrous exterior fades into an affectionate and caring look as he sends her off, telling her to fight her own demons as he fights his. She then returns home with a hopeful determination, ready to face the hell of her old life, this time without depending on her best friend. There's also a point where Guts and Puck reflect on all of the chaos that ensued, and for once, Guts finally starts to open up to Puck just a little bit. For an arc so horrifying, dark, brooding, and depressing, the ending is quite wholesome and, in a way, cute and happy. I think it's quite a bittersweet way to end the arc, and honestly, it's really satisfying. We see the Skull Knight riding on horseback through a field of corpses, and in this image he, much like Guts, resembles that of a Grim Reaper, the bringer of death. We're later treated to an image of Guts reaching to a light, his only salvation in life, his goal, his happiness, but it's covered by femto. Because of Griffith, it is unreachable, and he is now his only priority. standing in front of his goals and ambitions. The manga is very good at visually portraying the way that Guts feels, showing him lost in an abyss of nothingness, as he's completely shrouded in Femto's darkness. Femto has affected his very being, the very reason he lives and breathes. All of it revolves around Femto. He's let Femto mold his very reason for breathing. Killing Griffith is the one thing he stands for. We get to see Puck respond to Guts' situation, and this very subtly enforces how differently the two react to things. Puck very cutely takes pride in his use, that he was able to save Guts or help him out in a very small way, and Guts sees how helpful he really is. We then see Farnese take center of the image, standing in a prideful yet anxious and skeptical position. This shows that despite her rank and military power, she doesn't have the self-confidence to back it up. This will be where I dissect one of the many fight scenes in Berserk, and in this particular fight, it constantly shows Guts at upward angles, establishing his menacing dominance. Often the layout will correspond with how the reader is meant to read it and where the eyes are supposed to go, and what I mean by that is a little hard to articulate. For example, you read from right to left and you move down the page. That's how the manga was intended to be read. So in a page like this, you'll see Guts' upper body, and then you'll read the dialogue mentioning something about his left hand. It's right next to his right hand, so this beckons your eyes to kind of go down his body and look at his left hand. Near his left hand is the next panel, where you see a man with a shocked reaction. Then dialogue next to it trails your eyes over to Serpico. This layout is pretty much all over this manga, and it's so frequent I feel like it's almost habitual. Like here, you'll see Guts moving from right to left, as if it is literally happening before your very eyes. I love this. Just the sheer intensity of the impact of his fist on this man's face. The way your eyes start on Guts and work their way down his bloody sword, then move to the next panel. Guts is not alone in being shown as tough and imposing either. We see a man with a staff who, much like Guts a second ago, is shown at an upward angle. Your eyes move in a downward motion as you see him swing, and our eyes move left as we see Guts dodge. There's another thing I personally adore, and that's the way that they put the fight to an end, by sort of giving Farnese a subtle perspective. Essentially, Farnese stood at the top of the hill, showing that she thinks she is above Guts, but Guts jumps to her level. This means that in his weakened state, he is on the same level as her, and had he not been injured, he probably would have won. Farnese is shown to be completely hollow, covered in a black mysteriousness with no identity, nothing but mysterious blackness, as if she herself does not know who she is. We see her shrouded in darkness, her only salvation the bright and beautiful cross. Religion is all she has to complete her, but it's not enough. One thing that is interesting is that both Guts and Farnese have scars all over their torsos. Guts got his scars chasing his salvation, his only reason for existing, revenge against Griffith. And in that same light, Farnese got hers, punishing herself in pursuit of her salvation, her god, her religion. We see the cross showing a more brighter aspect of Farnese's life, but Guts emerges from the darkness behind her. I find it fitting that she is half naked, as this shows her vulnerability, and it fits very well for what happens next. We see these grotesque dog creatures with human faces. In my opinion, it looks creepy because dogs aren't exactly meant to be as intelligent as humans, but when you see a dog with a human face, it's as if the dog is more on your level, like it has intentions that a dog would never have. Or maybe it's because there are fucking veins coming out of his head and his eyes are bulged and he looks like he's on fucking crack. I don't fucking know. Guts gives a dark, sinister smile to Farnese, finding enjoyment in her horror, as if to say, welcome to my world. Then comes the iconic rape horse scene where Farnese nearly gets fucking raped by a horse. God, I love this manga. Horses typically represent freedom, but this scene kind of flips that on its head, as if to say, what if that freedom overpowers you and takes from you what it wants without your consent? Farnese attempts to mount the horse in the hopes that she can be free from this horror, but she learns that there is no escape. She's lucky, however, that this triggers flashbacks for Guts' PTSD as we see his remembrance of Casca burnt into the back of his mind, and he saves Farnese before anything can happen. She isn't completely saved, however, as a demon forces her to think on her desires, and her moral shackle repressing the dark thoughts that cross her mind from time to time are now released. She finds Guts attractive because of her own inability to protect herself, but Guts is able to face his fears with ease. In fact, I'd say that it's an amazing feat that Guts is able to stay mentally stable in even the most dire of situations and continue to fight with no problem. Farnese is trying to stay devoted to her religion, but when she sees someone like Guts, seeing that he's strong without relying on religion, but being told that he is evil, it fills her with a desire that she's not proud of having. After he snaps her out of it, she realizes what she's just done. This complete stranger has seen a side to her that she never wanted anyone to see. As a consequence, she wants him dead after the embarrassment that she was just subject to, desperate to keep her desires a secret. He just had her experience the truth, and she ended up getting caught up in her own personal desires. There's also one thing I noticed that I never picked up on the other 100 times I read this manga, and that was this little part right here. Serpico bids Guts a farewell and addresses Puck as Little One, showing that there are many things Serpico knows that Farnese does not. We see the old king on his deathbed, stuck in his sick, desperate misery, haunted at the fact that Griffith took away his daughter. His sick love for his daughter was birthed from his inability to move on from the past, and it's because of the love he has for his wife. We see Zod sitting on his empire of corpses just like Griffith did to achieve his dream of becoming a king. Zod, however, sits without purpose, being circled by crows, which represent communication from the gods. He then sees Griffith, and we see why the crows were here. He is the god that is communicating with Zod. Horns are an animal's weapon, they represent strength and aggressiveness, but Griffith subconsciously ripped off one of his horns. We see a lone cross, isolated by itself, representing how Griffith felt during his torture, all alone. This theme of being alone will be much important later in this arc, as it takes up a big part of the arc. We see a bird on fire, symbolizing Casca's view of Griffith. Much like the bonfire of dreams, it is a good memory being tainted by something she fears. Casca, as well, is shown to be on fire again, being burnt into Guts' memories and burned into the past. This is once again reiterating the bonfire of dreams and Guts' inability to move on from the past. This situation of these commoners and these peasants sacrificing random people who they believe to be witches is pretty good commentary on the lengths that man will go when it's scared, basically. I find it pretty sad that for the most part people do very irrational, over-the-top things just because they're scared. Anyway, we see a cute moment where the young girl grabs Puck and then sees Guts, and I find it funny to see a sinister and creepy man giving a heartwarming welcome. After Guts finds out that Casca is missing, he quickly gets irrational and starts interrogating them for not keeping track of her, but they quickly point out that it was Guts who left, and Rickard searched for Casca, but unlike Guts, he actually came back. A lot of Griffith's sympathizers use this as proof that Guts is a bad person, but if you were smart, you'd know that this is called giving a character depth, and Berserk fans are not smart up until this point. Guts' hatred is what kept him going. It kept him alive, and it's seen from every scratch on his face and every dent in his blade. But he learns quick that he got so obsessed with his hatred that he forgot that Casca needed him. I love that the Band of the Hawk gets represented by their swords, because this was the very item they used to make their name big, the very item they each used to win every fight. I think a cool idea would be for when Guts inevitably dies, his sword as well could be there with them, at the top of the hill of the Band of the Hawk. We then see Guts, alone in the darkness, vulnerable without his equipment or clothes, his only light being fire, representing, once again, his past and his ambitions. In every depiction of the eclipse, the sun is covered by the moon, blocking out the light, making it seem like there's no hope, which is probably why he chose for it to be an eclipse to begin with. What I think is even worse is that the eclipse is so far away, and all we see between us and the covered-up sun is a sea of apostles. When Griffith raped Casca, he gave Guts the same look of a beast hunting its prey he gave many others. We see Guts looking at his hand, the only hand he has left, thinking back on all the wonderful moments of his life. I love that Guts is represented by a dog, because his loyalty to Griffith was similar to that of a dog, and before that he lived the life of a stray dog. He can seem threatening and imposing, even monstrous, but deep down he's a sad animal that wants to experience love. Guts is now realizing his mistake. He stated that he would never let go of the things he loves, but he just made the same mistake again in pursuit of revenge. He made the same mistake twice, and as a consequence, feels that he'll never change unless he makes the stance now. Guts decides that this time he will actually change, and decides that his first move will be to save Casca. I also think that this was a great way to end Gato's character arc. One last time he gets to see the thing that left him doing what he did. Sparks. Gato gets to die happy, because even though he felt like his life had no meaning, he took in a young girl and raised her, and now he feels that he has something to leave behind. With that said, let's talk about the demented appearance of the devout followers of Mausius. Mausius, too, is a false idol, as everyone loves him, but he tortures the innocent to cleanse them of their sins. Unlike the villains thus far, he is not an apostle, but he is a devout follower of God, which gives him the ability to be a pseudo-apostle. He fearmongers people into thinking that the branded are monsters and the poor are unholy. He claims to be a man of God, but would a man of God really smash people's limbs and leave them to be feasted on by crows? Right off the bat, we see the kind of cruel tyrant he is, yet how highly he is held by the opinions of others, all in this one introduction scene. He smashes in the head of a non-believer with his holy book, a book used to preach good things, being used for a sin, murderous wrath. We also see Casca's innocence, not seeing the danger in the situation, and not knowing that she's with a bunch of prostitutes who are typically looked down on. We're then introduced to Isidro, my least favorite character in the manga, which I will touch on much later. But I will give him credit. His introduction did a good way of introducing him as a character and giving you a synopsis of who he is. We see him stealing a bunch of men and attempting to lie his way out of it, only for his lie to come true. This shows us that Isidro is typically in the wrong place at the wrong time and is almost always getting himself into an unfortunate situation. Despite serving little to the story, and despite how often stupid and inconsiderate he typically can be, his purpose in this arc was pretty fun. Isidro serves mainly as a slight jab at people who think it'd be cool to be Guts, or, you know, just the people who idolize him. There's a chance he will grow up and stop being so damn immature in the future, seeing as how he is Guts' disciple. But in any case, we get to see Guts be badass again. He moves with such speed and precision and fucking flips upside down. God damn, what a badass. There's also this creepy image of the skin of a human blowing in the wind, which could be symbolic of what an apostle is. It is no longer human, but resembles that of one, and barely even considerably alive to boot. They also reiterate Mazgus' methods. He saves a homeless peasant's baby, and around this part, he seems like a genuinely good person. What a sweet guy, until, you know, he takes her to the torture dungeon and tells Farnese not to avert her gaze, for this is the horrors of the real world. Suddenly, Mazgus doesn't look as kind as he did initially. In fact, he looks rather horrifying. People are starving under imperialism with nobody to help them survive, help them take care of their children. Prostitutes are forced into this job because they have no way of making money otherwise in this broken world. We're then introduced to Luca, who splits a gift, a kind gesture from a man who loves her, evenly among her friends. It shows that while she appreciates the gift, she more or less believes that her comrades come first. Nina, however, is different from her. She doesn't have the strength to help others the way Luca does. This is shown by a part where a deformed man gets stoned just because of the way he looks. Similar to all the deformed disciples of Mazgus who turned evil because of society's view on them being abnormal, they are ruthless monsters who only let Mazgus call the shots for them. Nina sees how unfortunate the man's situation is, but decides to join in on the people throwing rocks at him in fear that they'll turn on her. Pretty similar to the way that Farnese decided to join in on people burning the heretics, even though she deep down knew that it was wrong. She just goes along with everyone else and does what they do despite having full knowledge that this is not okay. Honestly, I feel like I understand her hatred for Casca. She hates Casca because she's innocent. She envies her cluelessness, and she hates that Casca is content with relying on others. But she doesn't understand just how unfortunate Casca is, and that's a real downside. The tainted baby continues to pursue its mother, but it doesn't know that Casca can't be a mother when she's cursed with the mental prowess of a child. It's fitting that Casca has the mentality of a child because Nina too has the mentality of a child, and they're similar in a way. We then get to see the perspective of Mazgus' men. Deformed men playing with crows, showing that this side has its own perspective. I also like that one of them has a disease that gives him warts when exposed to sunlight. It is pretty tragic. He can never experience the light. He's literally forced to live his entire life in darkness. They then go to see Mazgus, who is smashing his face on the floor, bowing to his cross. Mazgus inflicts pain on his own body merely over his belief of a god that doesn't love him back, much like how Farnese pointlessly hurts herself over her god as well. He then makes a very small allusion to who I'm assuming is Void, but I referenced this in Lost Children. We then cut back to Nina, who is pushing away a man who just wants to be close to her. This part is a bit sad because I feel that she's pushing him away due to the fact that she feels that if anyone worries about her, she'll leave them behind and hurt them. In fact, she even takes him to a pagan orgy to scare him because she feels her life has no meaning anymore. A pagan orgy is merely just a party in which people fuck and worship a pointless god and sin because it makes them feel more alive. He's willing to go along with the sex and whatnot until he discovers that they cook the children they have, and suddenly he's not so into it anymore. She has this niche religion because she rejects a god that would force her to die and become a prostitute. It's an unholy mess of murder and sex. just like everything else in the world. I should also point out that the cooked and melted child looks a lot like Guts' unborn tainted child. In any case, Luca catches up to her and lectures her for what she's done, and after Nina throws a hissy fit, she bends her over and spanks her. With, my erection from this aside, Luca spanks her because she acts like a child, so she's going to treat her like a child. It's kinda hot. In any case, Casca gets stranded in the orgy, and the men decide that they want to rape her, but then the demons that let her get raped by Griffith are now saving her life. As a consequence, the pagan orgy turns from a party filled with sin into a party filled with demons and sin. Meanwhile, Guts sits peacefully resting on a dead tree, much like when he was born. Perhaps he has a fixation on dead trees, I don't know. We're treated to beautiful pictures of the gorgeous night sky and a nice picture of Puck's thick ass. There's also these two images that are almost instantly back to back, in which Guts remembers the vivid image of the corpses he saw in the eclipse, etched in the back of his mind, and the same goes for Serpico, with the death of his mother etched in the back of his mind. I also want to point out that I criticized this scene in the anime because he just said his mother was killed and left. Here he continues to talk for a little bit and leaves on a more reasonable note. Much like how fire is reminiscent of what drives Guts, his past, fire also has a lot to do with Farnese. There's this other really hot scene where Farnese touches herself to the thought of burning people at the stake. What the fuck? Essentially, she is scared of her own unholiness. Getting off to the thought of burning people alive makes her feel like she's evil. She continues to deny that she's in the wrong and that her actions are truly justified, but she doesn't really know if that's the case. She knows that these people are innocent, but she burns them nonetheless because society has pushed her to do so. As well, I think Farnese feels very lonely. She feels like she has nobody to rely on or that understands her in any way. In any case, I also found it interesting that Guts could basically sense Casca's presence. Maybe they really were meant for each other. However, before he can get to Casca, Nina decides that she has to leave, and she takes Casca with her simply because she doesn't want to be alone. She tells herself that it's for Casca's sake, as Casca can't be alone, or she'll be taken advantage of, but we all know Nina's only taking her along as company to avoid loneliness. Nothing more, nothing less. However, they get stopped by these terrifying men who think that Casca is a witch because of the horrible things she's summoned. One of the men holds a dead crow on a stick, symbolic of an ending to all bad things, which is what these men think killing who they believe is a witch will do. The occult pagan orgy group kidnaps and attempts to gangbang Nina and burn Casca at the stake, even going to the extent to put a crown of thorns on her like Jesus Christ. The moose head monster resembles Baphomet, a god that an occult group of Templars were accused of worshipping and was subsequently incorporated into disparate occult and mystical traditions. Berserk is basically using Baphomet to show how demented people can be when pushed to the edge. In any case, Isidro jumps in and he essentially sees himself as a knight in shining armor, but he looks rather ridiculous. I feel this is a pretty cute way of once again establishing how egotistical he is, yet unimpressive. Baphomet ends up being possessed and turned into a pseudo-apostle, given limitless strength of an apostle without sacrifice and without consent. Baphomet's costume was originally fake, but he spent so much time in his fantasy that it ended up being real and consuming him, as demons were the cause of it. It's kind of tragic if you think about it, because he died without an identity. He died wearing a mask. We don't really get to see what he truly looks like. He became a monster before he became a man. We see an image of Guts resembling that of a dark shadow in a world of light, as he's viewed that way by everyone else.
My anaconda don't want none unless you got buns, hun.
Boy, toy named Troy.
We also see the iconic image of Casca looking up at Guts, and for just a moment, he genuinely looks like a hero. We see a fierce, visceral, violent, and intense battle with Baphomet. Baphomet stands towering over Guts, but Guts stands his ground. Afterwards, Guts tells Isidro to get Casca out of here and runs the other way to fight Serpico on a cliff. This is symbolic of his life constantly being on edge. Much like Serpico, however, Serpico is much smarter than most of Guts' enemies. He uses the fact that they're both symbolically and literally fighting on a cliff to his advantage. This is to signify how similar the two are, using the materials that they're given to win no matter the cost. It's also symbolic of how living life on the edge never gets either of them down, and they use it to their advantage. Serpico's quick movement looks like it flows so naturally, drawing your eyes down to the next panel. We see an image of Nina clinging onto Casca, showing how much stronger Casca is than her despite her innocence. Nina sees the tortured victims, and her fear grabs hold of her, spiraling her into nothing but an entrapped darkness. Casca gets put in a trap as well. It represents her life thus far, alone, dark, and surrounded by dangerous spikes. If you move even an inch, you will die. As a consequence, Farnese seeing these demons has crushed her faith, and now she sees Puck, meaning that now she's been exposed to the light. Mazgis' men stands in front of him, protecting their salvation, and Mazgis stands in front of the cross, protecting his. The Bailet oversees Mazgis, showing that because he's obsessed with protecting his salvation, he has his back turned to the truth. As in this case, the Bailet represents what lengths men will go for their goals and ambitions. Casca is surrounded by hell, but her baby is the light that keeps her here. It's the thing she longs for, naturally, seeing as she is a mother. Then we get treated to a fantastic battle. There's this part where Guts' sword comes down, and it's just so satisfying because it draws your eyes even further down the page. This is one of the best fights in the entire manga. Guts taking on all these badass torturers at once, kicking ass and taking names. There's also this part where Mazgis gets a pair of wings resembling the hawks, and there's this baby-faced monster that looks creepy. In fact, all these torturers look fucking creepy, but watching them all fight Guts at the same time is fucking amazing. It's just so over the top. Mazgis, once again, looks as if he is protecting Casca from Guts, but we know that he's not. We see a cross made of human skin, demented and fucked up, yet representing a symbol that so many people hold dearly. The Bailet is lonely, much like the deformed followers of Mazgis, and much like Nina, and much like Farnese. This is one of the central themes. The Bailet was accepted by no one and sits in darkness below the death and filth of society, as if to signify that he's even lower than that. That's how he feels. That's how he thinks people perceive him, forgotten, never to be remembered. We also see an image of a cross scaring Farnese as she hides in her innocence beneath it. Guts' face is grabbed by a claw, holding him back from saving the one he loves, just like in the eclipse. These corpse worms are what is hidden under the light that everyone parades around. This is the truth that nobody sees. We also see a hand that reaches to the sky. It symbolizes strength and power, which is what God Hand grants you. There's this fucking horrifying part these monsters feast on a poor innocent child's limbs, looking like a goddamn death metal album cover. The fires across the forest start and form into a Bailet. Guts oversees it and notices that he is caught right in the palm of the God Hand. This, I feel, kinda speaks for itself. These men go along with what Mazgis says because he gives them reassurance. He makes them feel like things will be okay if they just follow his wisdom. The lonely Bailet consoles the lonely fetus because he understands all too well how he feels, alone and with nothing. Then Guts and Mazgis finally have a showdown, and it is fucking fantastic. I love it so goddamn much. This fight is just so fast-paced, over the top, each panel filled with rage and brutality. It's fucking epic. This is what this arc has been leading up to. We see them at a side angle, and this is impressive because it shows the duality of man, and shows that despite the difference in their size, they are still equals in this battle. It also takes into account a good rule that Berserk 2016 ignores about the fight being shown on one side. I guess I can go ahead and explain what I mean by that. Typically a fight is only shown by one angle, because if you show the other side, you'll get your viewers disoriented and confused on where the people are. In the anime, the fights are shown from the most random fucking angles. It's all over the goddamn place. Regardless, there's this fucking intense part where Guts flips this dude over his head and the angel comes falling down. Fuck, this manga's badass. Now that I think about it, the blood monster is horrifying because blood is precisely what takes up most of the human body. To think that something inside you is trying to kill you is pretty scary in my book. But Guts remains unfazed. He just lights his blade. The blade that saved his life millions of times before, with fire. Fire that represents every person's dream and inspiration, their desires. Fire that represents Guts' past, his motivation. He must save Casca. The fire is him cherishing the memories they had together, and fire that represents the one thing that made Farnese feel like she wasn't alone in the world. But that doesn't get explained until the next arc. Luca also puts Nina in a barrel, and Nina is shown in a cold darkness, alone, but also sheltered from the world around her, and the image is far away, showing how small she feels. After all is said and done, Guts sees Griffith, and for a moment, Griffith resembles that of a beautiful angel, petting Zod as if he were a pet. And I think this is the perfect way to end the arc, by alluding to the fact that Griffith is still out there, and Guts might find him and take his revenge. I also like how, despite the fact that I genuinely hate Nina, she too matures in her own way by deciding to pursue a future with those that care, even though she feels that she'll die soon. The arc then ends with a beautiful image of the Skull Knight looking on at a hopeful future, which is fitting because it began with him looking at a field of death and despair, hopelessness. Berserk reference.